Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. And today we're going to talk about some new 2023 commitments for the Huskers. Matt Rhule filling out his coaching staff, and then we'll touch on the Nebraska basketball team, kind of getting dominated by Michigan State last night. But we will start with two commitments from Cameron Leonard and Ethan Nation. They are now two of the top five signees that are already signed with Nebraska, in this 2023 class. Cameron Leonard is a four-star recruit, ranked 308th in the 24/7 sports composite rankings. Ethan Nation is number 463. So, Danny, what are your reactions to these commitments for, Nebraska?
We had heard about their names floating around for quite a while, right? And I read that Nation, I believe it was, had been committed since December, and this was all formality. But it's good to see the names in writing. Good to see the names finally in the fold. The top 25 class in the composite rankings, and it's just more talent for a class that ranked 60th just a couple weeks ago. So, this is a really, really solid class, and it was really awesome to see. The words Nebraska and the Nebraska hat at the All-American game yesterday. It's really just awesome to see us kind of make a recruiting impact on a national stage. It was kind of interesting too to see some names that we recruited also play well at the game. I saw a little bit of Avery Johnson, the quarterback that I believe Mark Whipple offered, and he committed to Kansas State, but it was kind of interesting to see, all these names. And the game itself is always fun. You got the best of the best playing, and we got two of the best in the game, two Nebraska. So I really can't complain. It was a great birthday present. The basketball team, however, did not deliver me a birthday present, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, they definitely dropped the ball again, and happy birthday too.
Thank you.
Happy late birthday.
28. I feel
Yeah.
65, but it is what it is.
But yeah, I mean, it's two good pickups. I mean, it seemed like once Cameron Leonard took that visit back to Nebraska and was reoffered, it seemed like he was going to commit there. But it's a nice pickup. He doesn't have the length of some edges. He's not 6'4" or 6'5", but he can rush the passer, and we've seen a lot of guys that are 6'2" or whatever that have had success in that way. So I'm excited about that, and I think it shows. You look at. They've added him, Princewell, Umamalian, Maverick Noonan, Kai Wallen, Dylan Rogers. So they've added a lot of, edge rushers, like five of them. So, I mean, that's definitely, a position they were focused on. And I think hopefully that'll be a strength going forward. And then Ethan Nation, I feel like is, he had over 50 offers coming out of high school and, played really well this week in the, the practice. The game is one thing, but the practice is almost where you see more of it. And he, was guarding some of the best receivers in the country and did a really good job. I think people undervalued him because of his height. He's not, he's listed at 5'11". I think he's probably a little bit under 5'11", but a lot of teams like the quarterbacks to be, they have certain measurables, 5'11 and a half or whatever. And, that's not, I don't think that necessarily means he's not going to be a great player. And I think a lot of schools are going to have missed on him because, they passed on him because of the height. He clearly can cover, he's got, 20 pass breakups, 12 interceptions during his high school career. So he can get his hands on the football. And I think those are skills that generally, translate. He's got the speed, obviously he's going to have to get bigger. I mean, he's only 170 pounds, and that's, causes some concern with tackling and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's when you add two guys that are basically among your top five in terms of commitments on one day, it's a good day on the recruiting trail.
I was watching some of Ethan Nathan's tape last night, and he reminded me a lot of Cam Taylor-Britt. Just his tenacity and the way he goes after the football, as well as his ability to cover. Cam Taylor-Britt was very good at, being that versatile player, being a physical player, and, having tremendous athleticism. And Nation definitely has that. He has the speed, he has the athleticism, and like I've said before, he's the perfect fit to 3-3-5 defense due to his quick instincts and his athleticism. So, I mean, if he can turn out even half as good as Cam Taylor-Britt did, I'll be very happy, and I think there's a good chance he may even be better. But I think it's a great pickup for Nebraska, and like we've also mentioned before, I believe he was one of the last visitors for one of the big visit weekends, they asked him to come on, I don't know, I think it was a Thursday, and then he was in Lincoln that Saturday. So good on the staff for, seeing him and acting quickly. And, he, like you said, he had a solid offer sheet. So this was definitely a big pickup.
Yep, and I feel like if he was a little bit taller, obviously, or whatever, there would have been more teams interested in him. But there's also just not as many scholarship, openings at the end of the year. So, that kind of played in Nebraska's favor, I think, with Cameron Leonard too. And it came down to like basically them and Maryland, and I don't know, Michigan State might have been pushing in there as well. But yeah, he's, I think, especially both of those guys wouldn't shock me if they contributed next year, because they're at two positions. I mean, you look at guys that are 5'10" or 5'11". I mean, there's a lot of quick slot type players in college football, and so you use a cornerback there in Nebraska. They've got their starters set at cornerback, but after that, I think it's there's definitely some snaps to be had next season. I'm not really sure if Tommy Hill's going to stay on the offensive side of the football or not. Maybe he'll transfer. I'm not sure, but there's definitely some area for improvement in the secondary, and it wouldn't shock me at all if Ethan Nation was competing for some playing time as a third or fourth cornerback next year.
And you could say that about a lot of the 2023 class. I think there's a lot of guys in this class that can, come in and compete. Eric Fields is one that comes to mind. I love him, but he's a impact playmaker at the linebacker position. Then you have, a guy like Riley Van Poppel on the defensive line, and nothing about the defensive line unit from last year makes me say that okay, a freshman can't come in and make an impact. They have to sit and watch. I mean, you know, there is room for improvement on the defensive line, and I think Riley Van Poppel can bring it. So I think what you see with this 2023 class is a lot of players that can come in and play right away, as long as they show the effort and that they've learned the playbook and are ready to go. Because I think this year it's going to be all about being ready to go, and because I think this is like I said before, a good schedule that Nebraska shouldn't miss out on.
Yeah, and they definitely are going to need pass rushers. I feel like there's Gunnarsson and Butler are kind of but there's really no proven pass rusher on the entire roster. I mean, so hopefully they'll look at the transfer portal at that position too. But it would be nice to have some of these guys come in and contribute right away. I mean, that's asking a lot, especially pass rushers. But Princewell Umamalian definitely seems like a guy that could, and Cameron Leonard too. Potentially Maverick Noonan. Sometimes Nebraska players do get a little undervalued and underranked just because the competition that they're playing again kind of limits their ceiling. And if you read up on how 24/7 puts together its rankings, I mean, part of it is based on location and the historic numbers of recruits that come out of certain parts. So you're not going to see historically very many 4 stars out of Nebraska. That's just the way that it works, because historically there's never been that many, and so it's just kind of hard to judge that. But I think that Maverick Noonan is a 4-star caliber player. I really do. And I mean, Garrett Nelson was kind of the same way. I can't remember if he was a 4-star, but he wasn't like a high ranking 4-star, but out of Scotts Bluff, I believe. And I think that Maverick Noonan is a guy like that who can come in and make some early contributions. But yeah, it's interesting with this class. Now it's up to 23 signees, and I'm interested to see if there's any more that come up in this late signing period. I don't really think so, outside of maybe if they find a quarterback that they like.
Yeah, and I think maybe I would say the next movement or the next player pickup would be after spring ball. Once more spring ball attrition, happens. I don't think it's going to be a major impact player, but just something to kind of tie up loose ends, so to speak. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. I mean, I think they could use maybe one more offensive lineman as well, but overall, I'm very happy with the way this class has come together, and so much for the theory that Matt Rhule can recruit, because he and his staff have done an incredible job over the last 3 weeks or so,
Yeah, and I think that
month or
the
so. Excuse me, not 3 weeks.
I still think, yeah, there could be some more additions via the transfer portal. Nebraska needs a tight end, and they've talked to, I think, one out of North Texas that might be coming in for a visit. I definitely think they could use some help on the offensive line, and potentially wide receiver, and also edge. They definitely need to add an edge or two before the season. I mean, I just don't. I don't think this is a great group to go into the season with. You lost your top three pass rushers. I just think you need somebody with experience that's proven that they've got sacks at the FBS level before. Because basically, I don't know if they even have. I don't know if Gunnarsson and Butler have even had a sack in their career. They might have, but the number of career sacks coming back for Nebraska is pretty low. So, the transfer portal window is open for like 2 more weeks, and then it's open for 2 weeks after spring ball. So I would think between now and then there would be some additions. So we'll see what happens. But in terms of this 2023 class, that may be looking at a quarterback, but outside of that, there's not a ton of players left on the board. There's a couple of linebackers um, that I think that they're going to be committing to Maryland, like Michael Harris. I'm trying to think of their names, but they're twins, and they were committed to UCF. And if they don't wind up going to Maryland, maybe Nebraska could make a push there. But for the most part, I think the 2023 class is pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered at this point.
Yeah, and now we start the 2024 class. Not to rush things, but I'm excited about what they can do with the 2024 class just because of the work that they've done in a short period of time with the 2023 class. And so, I think they could probably button up some loose edges. I mean, I'm thinking maybe Malik Hornsby, possibly. I know his father posted a picture in some sort of Facebook group with him in a Nebraska uniform as a fan edit. So maybe his father knows something that we don't. But um, overall, I'm very happy with how this has turned out. I think this class has a lot of balance to it. I think this class has a lot of diamonds in the rough, and you know, it may not look pretty or whatever to some, but I'm very happy with the job that has been done. And obviously, the results will speak for itself on the field come the season. But overall, compared to where we were just a month ago, it's been a great turnaround by Matt Rhule and the coaching staff. And I'm excited to see a lot of these players, hopefully make an impact. Because honestly, I was looking at the 2020 class the other day, and just the amount of names that just never panned out was absolutely crazy. Henry Gray, Turner Corcoran was the highest rated player in the class, and so if we can have these players stick and develop and pan out, that would be a big step in the right direction in comparison to previous staffs.
Yeah, it definitely would be. Some other news to talk about. Matt Rule's staff has reportedly finalized. The Huskers haven't announced it quite yet, but Rob Dvoracek, who played under Matt Rhule and has been a defensive assistant, last year, this current season under the Carolina Panthers, is going to be hired as the linebackers coach. Nothing really new there. He also has worked at Lehigh with defensive ends and linebackers in the 2019-2020 seasons. And he spent 2 years at Baylor as a quality control assistant under Phil Snow. So he understands kind of, what Rhule wants, played for him. He's done a couple of different things. So there's that move. And then we finally have a wide receivers coach. We thought maybe Joe Daly from the Panthers, but it's actually going to be somebody else from the Panthers, Garrett McGuire, who is the son of Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire, who was on Matt Rhule's staff at Baylor. He was basically, the Bob Wager hire of that staff. And, Garrett McGuire is a young guy, but, he's been in the NFL these past couple of years. He was a backup quarterback for Rhule at Baylor, and now he's going to coach receivers here at Nebraska. So, Danny, what do you think about, these two moves? I guess let's start with Dvoracek.
Well, I think it's a good move because, he gives you experience on the defensive side of the football. He's somebody that Rhule is familiar with, and, somebody where he can be on the same, page as Rhule, that type of staff cohesion. And, I think Tony White to me is the big domino on the defensive side of the football. And, I'll be curious to see how Dvoracek and White work together. I think there's a chance where Dvoracek could really kind of stand out on this staff because it would be, you know, that the 3-3-5 defense has a chance to really, highlight the coaching staff's competency. And so I'm excited for him to come to Nebraska just because I think that it's good to have another set of eyes and he can possibly add his own little wrinkles into the defense with personnel and how he evaluates.
Yeah, I think, I like that he's coached, defensive ends before too. I mean, they need somebody that can actually coach, pass rushers outside of probably Terrence Knighton. So maybe that's another part of it where he can help coach outside linebackers. I know Tony White has coached linebackers before. But yeah, it's a solid move. I mean, I don't think it's like the dream hire that you
No.
wanted at linebacker. I mean, that would have been Jeff Collins or somebody like that. But it's somebody that's familiar with Rhule, and same with Garrett McGuire. I don't think that if that stuff didn't happen with Mickey Joseph, I don't think that he would have been hired. So I mean, but I don't really understand everybody freaking out about it. I don't really care that he's young, and he's been around football his entire life. His dad, was obviously a head coach at Texas Tech. He played quarterback a lot of time. You see a lot of guys that played quarterback go to wide receivers coach. That so I think it's a good move to get a smart guy on there. I'm sure he's going to recruit really well. He's out of the just out of the NFL. And I think he's going to be able to obviously relate to these kids. So I don't really understand what everybody's freaking out about with Garrett McGuire.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We haven't even played, one game, and people are already freaking out about Garrett McGuire. Was he Nebraska's first choice? Probably not, but our first choice got into, some issues. And I don't think Garrett McGuire, he's young, yeah, but on the other side of the coin, we've had coaches with experience in Mario Verduzco and Mark Whipple, and they've been awful. They were awful. So I really don't understand the Garrett McGuire, kind of, uneasiness. I think he could be a very bright young mind in football, and I know people were worried about, how that would impact Nebraska on the recruiting trail, and I don't think it will. I don't think it will that much. I think McGuire is somebody who these guys can relate to with him being a bit younger, and I really think that we could be looking at a rising star in the coaching ranks. I really do. I'm not going to say that he's going to be the next best wide receiver coach in the nation, but I do think there is a smart football mind in McGuire. I remember reading the national scouting director for On Three. I forget his name, but he said that McGuire was an incredibly smart football mind, and so I really don't understand, freaking out over Garrett McGuire. I think it's stupid, honestly. And quite honestly, there's only so much money to go around too. I can imagine that the staff pool is probably getting a little bit thinner at this point in terms of financials.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so, and it's just yeah, Mickey wasn't obviously not an option, and there's no, there wasn't a lot of I don't know that people would have been that excited about Joe Daly either. So I mean, he's got connections to Texas. He's going to help Nebraska recruit Texas, and look, I think there's a reason that Matt Rhule took him to the Panthers. So I like this move. I think it's a good hire. Overall, yeah, these two moves, I'd probably give him, the grade of a B or so because it wasn't, the guy that you wanted to necessarily target, but that you're not going to get every coach that you want. And, a big part of, I think why Matt Rhule is going to be successful is I believe he's going to develop these assistant coaches. And I mean, if everything works out, these guys are going to be moving on to become head coaches elsewhere too, so that's something we need to see these guys develop. And I think that Matt Rhule, is prepared to do that. And that's something that, Scott Frost was incapable of doing. I mean, he couldn't even show up to meetings on time. So, yeah, so I feel confident in the staff and in Matt Rhule's ability to develop these guys. And yeah, I think that Garrett McGuire has been preparing for this for a long time, and I think he's ready. He's coming from it's not like he's coming from high school. He's been working in the NFL, so I think he's going to do a fine job. And he's got experience in this system, so it's not going to be different, working with Satterfield. I mean, they're going to all have a lot of the same terminology. Everybody's going to be on the same page there. So, I think it's good that Matt Rhule's got his staff in place, and now they can, keep recruiting and, move forward with spring ball. But yeah, the Malik Hornsby thing is kind of interesting to me because I just don't see how that they could all fit in that, quarterback room. But we'll see what happens. I mean, there's definitely going to be some more attrition, and who knows? I mean, to me, it definitely feels like even though Casey Thompson's coming back, it feels like he has an uphill battle to try to win the starting job, over Jeff Sims. That's my read on it.
Yeah, and that's how it should be, honestly, because I remember Adrian Martinez had no competition, and he just kind of, at times, I'm not going to say he didn't try or didn't take it seriously, but you could tell that he took his foot off the gas a little bit, and so it's good to have healthy competition with competent quarterbacks. And I'm really excited to see how the quarterback room plays out. Um, like I've said before, I think Jeff Sims fits this offense a little bit better in terms of what Matt Rhule wants to do with the RPOs. But we'll see. We'll also see what Casey's recovery is like. Maybe things go great. He comes out firing during preseason camp and he gets the job outright. Maybe, hopefully not. He suffers a setback and he kind of has to take a back seat and heal up. And Jeff Sims comes in, and who knows? It's a good problem to have, and I think Casey will welcome the competition, and so will Jeff Sims.
Yeah, and we'll see how everything kind of shakes out. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of competition at a few different spots. So we'll see how that goes. To shift towards our last kind of topic for basketball last night, it was a 74-56 loss for the Huskers on the road against Michigan State. It didn't, it started out okay. They were down 7-6 after the first TV timeout, and it was 16-13 at about the 11-minute mark. And then Michigan State closed on a 23-4 run to kind of end the first half. And, basically it was over from there. So what are your, reactions from basketball last night?
I'm a little bit confused. Not that they didn't play well, but it didn't look like the team we saw last Thursday. It didn't look like the team we saw last Thursday against Iowa. And while I think this team is good, it definitely has its peaks and valleys. I thought this was a winnable game, but like you said on Monday, winning on the road at Michigan State is never easy. So I'm not reading too much into this. This does kind of take away from my high that I had Thursday when they beat Iowa, but I think this team is going to have peaks and valleys, and I'm not too worried yet. If we see more of these games in January and February, then obviously my panic meter will go up. But this is a tough basketball conference. It's not a cupcake league. You're gonna have nights where any team can beat anybody. Look at Nebraska against Purdue. They almost beat Purdue, and no team is safe. There's no guaranteed win. So I'm just hoping that they can pick up a couple more wins down the road here and kind of just um, what's the phrase I want to use? Stay afloat, because I don't think that's a reflection of their talent so much as how tough this conference is. I mean, it is a really tough conference. I mean, didn't Rutgers have an upset win yesterday as well?
Yeah, Rutgers, 2 days ago, they beat
2 days
Purdue.
ago? Yeah,
Yep.
so there's no guaranteed win. Every single team is tough, and let's just hope Nebraska can continue to play, you know, consistently and not stray too far away from their game plan, because I do think it works.
Yeah, I think it's the Saturday they're playing at Minnesota, and I think that's basically a game that they have to win. There's not
Mm.
very many road games I think this team's going to be able to win, and if they want to get, people are talking about the NCAA tournament after the Iowa. I'm
Mm.
talking about the NIT. Got to get
Let's
to
start small,
500.
yeah.
So um, if they don't win that game, I don't think they're not going to be 500 team this year. There's just no way. They're because if they lose that game, they're 1-4 in the Big Ten, and they're going to have to finish 9-11 to get
Mm.
there. So I mean, and then you've got Illinois coming, then at Purdue, Ohio
Oof.
State's at home, at Penn State, home against Northwestern, at Maryland, at Illinois, home against Penn State, at Michigan, home against Wisconsin, at Rutgers, home against Maryland, home against Minnesota. So like really the only guarantee the easiest win is Minnesota at home. Every other game is going to be tough. Nebraska can beat good teams at home. I'm not saying that, but you've got to win some games on the road, and this is probably your easiest road game coming up on Saturday. So if you don't win that one, I just don't see how this team's going to finish 500 if they can't go to Minnesota and win. So that's basically where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
They had chances last night. They shot 8 of 20 from the free throw line. I mean, Derek Walker was 1 of 8. They were 2 of 16 from 3-point range, and basically Michigan State just they kicked them around on the boards, and they got stops and got on transition and made a bunch of threes. So I mean, it was disappointing, but You have to make shots to win games. I mean, you're not going to. They shot better in the second half, and they made it more competitive. But you can't come out and shoot 20% on the road against Michigan State and expect to be in the game, and then you miss 12 free throws. I mean, if you even make 8 of those, I mean, if you take those 12 misses and you make 75% of them, which is a pretty average number, then it's under a 10-point game, and then you hit a couple threes. I mean that you know. So I mean, I don't think that they played terribly. They could not make any shots, and so hopefully that
Yeah.
doesn't translate to Saturday at Minnesota.
It seems like we always struggle at the free throw line. It seems like the free throw line has been our Achilles heel for years, but yeah, the schedule is not friendly. And I think that Nebraska's really going to have to come out and put the pedal to the metal. There's no room for error now. Not that there was much room for error before, but a win on Tuesday would have made things, made things look a little bit nicer, but now they're entering the gritty part of their schedule, and we'll see what this team is made of. I mean, to be honest with you, this stretch last year kind of doomed Nebraska basketball a little bit because they just couldn't get anything going consistently. They got some things going at the end last year, but by then it was way too late. And if that happens again, I don't think we see Fred Hoiberg back next fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Fred will win enough games to come back because I think Trev realizes how I think that they'll win enough. I think they'll at least win 7 or 8 games or so. And I think that improvement will probably be enough to keep his job. But they have to go basically to get 500. They have to finish 9-11 in the Big Ten. So they're going to have to go 8-8 from here on out. And then they would need to go, they would need to win one game in the, I guess even if they lost their opening game, they would finish 500 in the tournament. So if they go 9-11, so if they go 8-8 from here on out, they would be eligible for the NIT. I think that's or one of the postseason tournaments. So that's the goal, but it's not going to be. I mean, think we have 8 home games and 8 road games. So I do think Nebraska can win 6 or 7 of these home games, but you got to steal a couple on the road. And so this is one that they absolutely need if they're going to have a shot at the postseason. And Minnesota is a vulnerable team. It's probably the worst team in the Big Ten. So I do feel like it's a good chance for Nebraska to go down there and get a win and bounce back. And if they can get that, then they'll have some momentum. As Illinois comes in here next Tuesday.
Yeah, and Illinois is going to be a tough game as well. So, I think like you said, the next game against Minnesota is going to really be a key one. There's not a lot of room for error, like I said before, and I just hope that this team can put something together because I think honestly, this is one of the more competitive rosters that they've had in years, and to waste it would be kind of just disappointing. Sounds familiar. You can kind of put that in for football as well, but as far as basketball goes, wasting this roster I think would be disappointing, especially since we won't have Riesel or Walker back next year, and then we kind of have to start from scratch again.
Yeah, and it's just I think Fred's finally understanding what it takes to win in the Big Ten and the kind of roster that you need to develop. So things are trending up in the right direction. Hopefully they can finish strong and build some momentum. And yeah, they're going to have to dip into the transfer portal again. Which is a pretty frequent thing. But I think it also is about recruiting the right type of players to recruit it. Like Eli Rice is a great example, a guy that is part of this 2023 class. He's at the IMG Academy right now, basically taking it as a prep year. But he's like 129th or something. He's going to come in here, and I think he's going to be ready to go. But he's not a guy that is going to be like headed to the NBA after 1 year. You know what I mean? He's going to play at Nebraska, hopefully for 3 or 4 years. I mean, hopefully he's good enough to start and all that. But those are the kind of players that you need. You need to build your foundation on those guys that are in the 75 to 150 range, because I think those are gettable players for Nebraska as long as they're winning, and those are the kind of guys that you can develop this program long term with to be competitive, and then you sprinkle in the guys in the transfer portal, and that's how you can get to the NCAA tournament and do those things.
Because the transfer portal has been a big source of talent for Nebraska basketball this year. You talk about Juan Gary, Griesel, I mean Bandamel. I mean they've gotten a lot of production out of the transfer portal. So I think I feel like it's a little bit harder to lean on in basketball than it is football in terms of just talent and roster spots and things like that. But I do think the transfer portal can be used to a good advantage for basketball, and I'm wondering if Fred will go there to find a point guard next year.
Yeah, yeah, well, most likely, we'll see.
Yeah.
There's some guys on the roster, but definitely going to be, if Fred, does win enough games to come back, I definitely think we'll see, Nebraska hunt for some scholarship players in the portal. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. And a big game on Saturday for Nebraska, so we'll come check back with us on Friday. We'll have a little preview for that, Nebraska and Minnesota. And so, yeah, we'll wrap up this episode here. Make sure you guys are getting, in the comments section, liking the videos. Let us know your thoughts on this new coaching staff, on these new commitments, and on this Nebraska basketball team. What do you think their chances are of advancing, to the postseason beyond the Big Ten tournament? And make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button. We'll have, some more recruiting updates, I'm sure, soon. The recruiting dead period is ending here, so things are reopening for transfers, so there should be some visits in the next couple of weeks. So keep in touch with huskerbigred.com and the greatcornholio.org for all your Nebraska news. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.